So we're talking today with Ken Kilbride, who is the CEO of ADHD Ireland. And we're going to learn all about ADHD and also the organisation. So first of all, you're very welcome to the show.
Well, thanks very much, John. Patrick Havings here. Really appreciate the opportunity.
It's great to have you on. You might start, if you will, by telling us what is ADHD?
So ADHD is what they call a neurological condition. So it's a condition that people are born with. And it generally affects the brain in three ways. So for people that are into computers, the simple way to describe it is, if you look at, iPhones have one operating system, Androids have another operating system. So people with ADHD have a different neural pathways than people that don't have ADHD. So again, what we say is it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. So it's a different operating system that people have. But the simple way then to describe ADHD is there's sort of three main behaviours associated with the condition within the name. So there's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so the first one is around inattention. Now it's not actually inattention, it's just the inability to maintain attention is the key driver behind the condition. So when someone with ADHD walks into a room, they don't see one thing, they see absolutely everything in the room. So they can't maintain attention as the key driver. Then there's the impulsivity, what we call executive function. And so executive function is like the regulator or the controller in the brain. So, as we all have thoughts, ideas, actions, there's something in the brain goes, let me think about that for half a second. People with ADHD don't have that, so they're very impulsive. And then there's the hyperactivity, which is on the go, driven by the motor all the time. So generally we get those three behaviours together, the inattention, the hyperactivity and the impulsivity, then you can get a diagnosis for ADHD. But just to say, because there is an awful lot more chat about ADHD these days. Yeah. You see it in the media and across, every second person now has ADHD. And it's a trend. It's trendy, it's great to have it, but what you find is you can only get the diagnosis when it's actually an impairment in your life.
Okay.
So there is a threshold to be met. It's not, I forgot my keys yesterday, I think I have ADHD. It's, when you can't pay your bills, when you can't stay in your job, when you're not performing in school, when it's actually a challenge and a difficulty in your life, and you're meeting those behaviours, well then you can get the diagnosis for ADHD.
And how does it manifest itself? What does a child with ADHD look like?
So what you find is that, the prime age for getting a diagnosis is the ages of 8 to 12.
Okay.
And what you find is that's primarily what's happening in schools. So what you find is that, we all think our children are great and we love them all. And what they do at home is what they do at home. It's when they go into this different social setting in places like school, that the different behaviour that they're displaying is different than the other 25, 26 children in the classroom. But within that figures, as we're saying, the prime age for getting the diagnosis is 8 to 12. But in that age range, what we're seeing is that 4 to 5 times more boys than girls get a diagnosis. And what the old saying is, girls internalise, boys externalise. So that's a generality. But what you find is the boys will externalise their ADHD and they're moving around the classroom, bouncing off the walls. Teacher can see that. The girls tend to be much quieter and have what's more the inattentive ADHD. So they're being dreamy, staring out the window, not causing a problem, not getting picked up. So again, how you're seeing it start to be express itself is the hyperactivity, and particularly through boys. And girls, because they're masking an awful lot more than the boys generally, can go on to develop anxiety and depression, particularly as they go into puberty. And so we'd always say if there's, a young girl, 13, 14, 15, showing for anxiety, depression, also check for ADHD. And just to bear in mind that ADHD is primarily genetic. So what you find is it's 50% boys, 50% girls. So again, boys tend to get diagnosed younger in life, women get diagnosed later in life.
I saw that it can affect adults also.
Oh God, yeah.
Are they adults who have had it since they were born and then have it later in life?
Yeah, so again, ADHD is a condition, because it's genetic, it's a condition that you're born with. But what you find is that, what we would call environmental impacts can make it better or worse. So if you know good parents who can help and support you, if you have a school that helps and support you, if you have university or work that helps and support you, well, that can mitigate your ADHD and help you to get through life an awful lot better. But what you find is, if you don't have a good school, maybe your parents don't understand it, maybe your workplace doesn't understand it, well, then the ADHD can get more challenging across the lifespan. But certainly what we are seeing, that there is this, idea, misconception out there, not in Ireland, but, worldwide, that ADHD is a childhood condition. And we certainly need to move away from that. And, certainly when we do talk for organisations and places like that, what we find is, and we know that, ADHD, when it's unmanaged and untreated across the entire lifespan, you're going to see higher rates of, marital breakdown. You're going to see higher rates of unemployment. You're going to see higher rates of substance misuse. And you're going to see higher rates of accidents, lower life expectancy. And so again, when ADHD is unmanaged and untreated across the lifespan, it can have quite a serious impact.
And how is it diagnosed?
So, as I said, the prime age for children is usually the age to 12. And, teachers are seeing, this child is acting differently than everyone else in the class. So what they would say is, you need to go somewhere generally with the HSE called CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. Just to bear in mind, there's lots of CAMS around, the Dublin 15 area, but they generally do have long waiting lists.
Yeah.
But, it's a great service once you can get into it. If you can't do that, a lot of people will go and get a private diagnosis done. But again, one of the things about ADHD that makes it different than other conditions in the neurodevelopmental spectrum, like autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, is there is actually medication that can work for people. But that needs to be prescribed by a psychiatrist in the first instance.
Right.
And so again, there's only literally one or two psychiatrists in Ireland at the minute that we know of taking on new people for ADHD for children.
Uh-huh.
And so again, they've got long wait lists. So you have a situation in Ireland where we are sort of a very well-developed, funded country. But still in all, if you have ADHD, there's long waiting lists and you can't even pay to get it done.
Is the treatment only medication?
Oh no, certainly not. In terms of ADHD, just generally, again, it exists on a spectrum. Once you get to that threshold for the diagnosis, and that threshold or spectrum is usually mild, moderate, or severe. And if you're mild ADHD, well, then you probably wouldn't be prescribed medication.
Right.
If it's moderate or severe, well, then medication will probably be part of the program going forward. But what we will always say is that the big thing about ADHD, that pills won't build skills. And, even psychiatrists will tell you that as well. So the great thing about ADHD, or the main thing about ADHD when you're getting the treatment, is to get the medication in combination with other therapies. So again, behavioural management, OT, speech and language therapy, so things like that as well. So when you get the two of them and you get them all working together, well, then you can produce the best outcomes for people with ADHD.
Was it common for it to be misdiagnosed for other conditions up to recent?
Oh yeah. Particularly for adults, again, particularly will get diagnosed, because you can see the swings and ups and downs, bipolar, particularly for women because they're going in and they're presenting with anxiety and depression. And, in fairness, GPs get 15 minutes per person coming through the door. And so again, we get, not saying hundreds of women coming to us. I've been on anxiety depression medication for the last 20 years. I've just found out I've adult ADHD. And so again, there is a huge amount of misdiagnosis out there as well. But again, in terms of, we have been working with someone called the ICGP, which is the Irish Council of GPs, and they've done surveys recently, and they've asked their GPs around the country, what's your top training need at the moment? And the answer they came back was ADHD. So again, with the Irish Council of GP, we're looking to put together a program to help inform GPs. Because, this is one of the other reasons why girls don't get diagnosed. Because there is that misconception out there that, it's boys and they're bouncing around. So, the 10-year-old girl sitting quietly in the surgery couldn't possibly have ADHD. And so, again, it's changing the narrative and the information around that so that everybody who does have the condition gets it as required.
And it must be a relief when a first-time diagnosis is given. For parents, knowing that their child finally has a reason for all their kind of different behaviour.
Oh yeah. Well, especially when we talk to adults, and again, we're working with the HSE at the moment to come up with a new plan for treating adults. So we had a plan that we launched in 2001, but since COVID, the numbers have rocketed going into ourselves and the HSE looking for adult assessment. So we're developing a new plan. But within that, we went to adult and said, look, what do you want to see from the service? And again, one of the questions that was asked, what's the value for you in getting a diagnosis? Why do you want this piece of paper? And again, adults came back to us on a regular basis saying, I've always known there's been something in my life. Yeah. To know that I'm not mad, bad, crazy, sad, or whatever it is, getting the diagnosis has been transformative. Just getting the piece of paper has been transformative for people, particularly for adults.
What about ADHD Ireland? When was that founded?
Oh, that was founded a long time ago.
Was it?
And so again, that was founded back in the 80s. And so again, some parents came together, there was no supports or anything for their children at the time. And so again, they came together, around the kitchen table in St. Logan and started doing something. And so in the mid-80s, they started to get a little bit more formal. And through the 90s, it was run as a volunteer organisation. And in about 2015, 16, 17, we started getting funding from the HSE. So at that stage, it went from, a volunteer-led organisation to having paid staff. And so now we have about 17, 18 staff with about 12 full-time people.
And was the term ADHD around at the time that you started?
No, it wasn't actually.
Right.
At the time, it was actually called ADD.
Right.
It was only in the mid-80s that they put in the H for the hyperactivity. And actually at the time, Ireland was one of the first people to adapt it. So actually we put the H in first. So up until 2019, we're known as HADD Ireland. But we figured everyone else wasn't changing the name, so we put the H in where everyone else has and became ADHD Ireland.
And what about the service you offer? What do you offer?
So again, we work, as I say, in close partnership with the HSE. So again, there's sort of the overall concept of how we operate is that the HSE will provide the assessment and the treatments and the medical side of it. We provide what's called the psychosocial elements. Okay. So again, we run the support groups, the parenting courses, the webinars, the awareness talks, that other side of it, to help and support people outside of the medical arena to work with their ADHD. So we do all of that. So again, last year we ran about 550 events, and again, with a small staff, that's 10, 12 a week. We're doing it again this year.
And it's important to include parents in that, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So again, just for instance, there is guidelines in terms of the assessment and treatment. Within the guidelines, one of the first treatments for a child with ADHD is parental training. And so again, even when you go to CAMS and they say, look, we think you should do a parental course. Now, some parents get a little bit upset about that, saying, CAMS or the medical professionals think I'm a bad parent and I need training. It's not that. Yeah. It's just to help and support a child with ADHD, you need to get the right training. So we run parental training courses for parents with ADHD. Organisations like Parents Plus run them as well. And there's lots of supports out there that you can tap into to get that training. So again, it is actually one of the recommended treatments for a child with ADHD is to get that parental training.
Your website lists programmes and they seem very interesting. You might tell our viewers what they're all about.
So again, we have a range of programs, and one of the big ones we have at the minute, we just mentioned the parent training there, but we have a sort of what a working arrangement with UCD and the HSE in terms of the Office with ADHD and ADHI, but we develop programs. So one of them we developed very recently over the last number of years called UMAP, which is the Understanding and Managing Adult ADHD Program. And so this is a 6-week online program that you don't need to have a diagnosis for, or you can have diagnosis, but people come along, and I'm not just saying it, but the amount of people that have come up to me and said that this course has been life-changing in terms of accepting and understanding their ADHD going forward has been phenomenal. And so again, that's been now become part of our core programs. We've just finished developing a new one called UNIMAP, which is the same program but redefined for students in college. So again, we're doing that. We have other things like that as well. We have digital offerings, and so we have an app for adults, and again, 40,000 downloads, which is a huge figure considering the amount of people in Ireland that do have ADHD for adults. So again, getting huge engagement there as well. We have our parental training. We're putting together a program with DCU at the moment, and to develop a program for the corporate sector, which will be evaluated and evidence-based. We can have that ready for a couple of years. And so again, a lot happening, more to come.
I can vouch that if you go to the website and check on the programmes, the information there is very comprehensive.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Do you fundraise? Must cost a lot of money.
It does, yes. We do a small amount of fundraising. One of the problems that we find just is if we were to go out, and shake buckets on the street for ADHD Ireland, we're not sure how much we would get just a minute, because there is still that public perception that it's the naughty child syndrome, where they're just bold, they just need a bit more discipline. And so again, we would get primarily funded through the HSE. We do get donations, we do, what we call our trading income. And so again, we go out and talk to corporates, we charge them for it, to be honest. We do things like that as well. We do an awful lot of teacher training, and we do anything we can to get in front of teachers. And, so we have other avenues apart from actually just shaking buckets. But, in a couple of years, yes, we hope when things, the tide has changed us a little bit more, we can go out and stand on the street looking for funds.
And do you have any important events coming up this year?
Oh, we have tons of them coming up. Just to say, March has been a very busy month for us already. And so we did a big event, just a couple of weeks ago, on the 8th of March for International Women's Day. And so again, that was phenomenal. We had 150, 250 women in DCU. We had, Louise McSherry, who's a well-known journalist, as MC, and people talk about their ADHD, and people going away saying it's the best event they've ever been at in their lives. And we're in the middle of Neurodiversity Week, so we'd actually 2 webinars, one on Wednesday night, one on Thursday night. We have a range of things. We've always a webinar coming up every month. October is ADHD Awareness Month, so we're currently planning a couple of large events for that. We have a conference coming up in May 22nd with UCD, Maynooth University, and some other well-known organisations around the world on university ADHD. So again, there's lots happening at the minute. And again, the simple way, without me describing it all, is you go onto our website, ADHDIreland.ie, and click on the events tab. You'll see it all there for you.
Very good. Now, we're coming right to the end of the interview. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we go?
No, obviously just, thanks very much for the opportunity, and love talking to you guys. And, if we can chat to you again in the future, we'd love to do that as well.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.